Okay. See. Oh. Hey, Poppin'. All right, you're here. All right, see. There's probably going to be a little bit of lag. But, yeah, let's see. Anyone else? All right, there's one watching. All right, regret. It's always great to have regret here. All right, fantastic. Boop-a-doop, boop-boo. Okay, so... All right, so for anyone who didn't read the title, this live stream is all about answering questions from the previous video about Holocaust denial. Anything you had from the video, I'll probably also go through some of the questions in the comment section of that video itself. So let's see what people got. Surprisingly enough, I haven't had to delete any comments. Not that there aren't comments worth deleting at this moment, but I simply haven't deleted any at the moment. It's been mostly positive, surprisingly enough. Most of the bad comments are mostly just people, typical, you know, you're spreading lies, bruh. You know, someone bringing up the whole conspiracy theory about Anne Frank's diary not being authentic because, oh, there's writing in ballpoint pen on some of the pages and there weren't ballpoint pens yet. Which there's actual explanations for all of that already, so you know, that's always fun. But, yeah. I haven't had to delete any, at least I don't think I've deleted any. Let's see. Oh, yeah, there's one guy. Did you know by supporting and pushing Jewish Holocaust, full of lies, you're actually denying the true Holocaust that happened in Nazi Germany between 1933 and 45, and oppression hundreds of years before still going on? He doesn't explain, this guy, Sakael, doesn't take the time to explain what oppression he's talking about between those years, because the only super oppression going on there was, you know, Jews. I don't know if this video's made it to 4chan or not, because I don't go to 4chan. I never, never go there. You know, what's that old Lion King meme, you know, do not, you know, everywhere the light touches is your kingdom. Don't go to the shadowy place, and the shadowy place is 4chan. I got a few people watching. All right, let's see. What other questions have been put up on the video? Just mostly a lot of mostly positive. And let's see, what was the best comment I've gotten so far? Well, let's look. Rowdy. It's hard to pick a best one because most of them have just been very positive. Yeah, just super positive for the most part. There's only like 8 dislikes now. That's a few more than when I last checked. see, Pseudoscience Marine, you know. It's just nice, mostly nice comments all around. And so a question that I put up in the video itself, concerned about whether or not I would be demonetized. And fun story about the whole getting demonetized thing. And well, I've uploaded 5 videos in relation to appropriating legitimacy. In the 5 videos, the first 2 were trailers. I uploaded a bad version of the trailer, which had some watermarked videos from a Critical Pass that I eventually got the authentic clips for. And I uploaded that version originally just for patrons. And it got both age restricted and demonetized. I uploaded the fixed version of the trailer that you guys saw Monday of last week, and that one simply got demonetized. And then I uploaded appropriating legitimacy 3 times to YouTube. The first time, a portion of the video got copyright claimed by Fullscreen and the Oxford Union, because I showed a portion of the debate Deborah Lipstadt was in at the Oxford Union about Holocaust denial criminalization. And so I went in, edited a chunk of that video out just so the copyright censors wouldn't take it, uploaded that version. And then that second version, of course, before it went live, it got demonetized, and luckily not age restricted, but still demonetized. And then I uploaded a third version with some fixed audio, but that version got demonetized, and then the second version ended up getting greenlit. And so that's the version that's live right now, is the second version I uploaded. But earlier this week, I received some copyright claims on the video, and so now I am waiting for those to resolve. I guess it's better than it being demonetized or age restricted. All right, let's look at the chat a little bit here. Let's see. Oh, thanks, Poppin. I appreciate, your channel is criminally underrated, by the way. Thank you. I think all us creators think the exact same thing about that. Let's see, Regret asks, is there much overlap between Armenian genocide deniers and Holocaust deniers? Actually, not a whole lot. In fact, they're almost mutually exclusive. As in, Holocaust deniers usually believe the Armenian genocide, and Armenian genocide deniers usually believe the Holocaust. In fact, there are some books out there, I don't want to name them because I don't want to give them any more attention, but they argue that the Armenian genocide was actually perpetrated by Jews. And this whole theory comes from the idea that the Young Turks was actually just a secret cabal of like Freemasons and Jews in the Ottoman Empire. And this whole idea comes from some documents from the British State Department, where they said, like the Secretary of State, or whatever that equivalent position is in the British government, laid out their suspicions that, I think the Young Turks are full of Jews that are secretly controlling the empire, and that's the entire basis for that conspiracy theory. And of course, the Armenian genocide is also usually something invoked by, Holocaust deniers of, you talk about the genocide of Jews, but you don't ban the genocide of Armenian. You don't ban Armenian genocide denial. So, why are you only banning the one against the Jews? Which is one of the reasons why I and many others don't like laws that ban Holocaust denial. All right, so, another question from Muggarock. Hey, Grant. I don't know what that emoji that is. How'd you find your sources? Great documentary. Well, I found my sources starting with just reading the book I already knew existed, which was Deborah Lipstaedt's Denying the Holocaust, Assault on Truth and Memory. And from reading that, of course, that one exposed me to some other books, especially, the books by Holocaust deniers themselves. But it was a bit limited, as in, Deborah Lipstaedt's book is great, but it doesn't cover the last, 26 years. Yeah, 26 years. And it's very much America-focused for the most part. It talks a little bit about, Farson in France and Irving in the UK, but it doesn't talk much outside of the US Holocaust denial history. And so, the best way I found it really was just Wikipedia and Google, honestly. Go to the Wikipedia page for Holocaust denial and just go down until you find something that strikes your interest, and then check their sources. And then, of course, Google is super useful. That's where I found the book Holocaust Denial as an International Movement. And for the others, it was mostly just looking up, the Holocaust and blank. And so I looked up, Holocaust denial and the Middle East, and that's how I got, the Arabs and the Holocaust. And then I just looked up some books on, the Holocaust itself, figuring out, okay, what happened to the camps, what did the Germans do to try to destroy evidence, and stuff like that. So yeah, Poppin saying, the puppet masters in conspiracy theories are usually either Jews, Freemasons, Catholics, the Illuminati, or a hybrid of them all. Yes, they usually are. It's usually the organizations that are very, well, I guess outside the norm, at least in an Anglo-American society. Most Americans are not Catholic, even though they are, demographically speaking, the plurality. But yeah, it's Catholics are a classic target in English-speaking countries. So yeah, hello, that rubber duck. See, Muggle Rock says conspiracy theories are fun, but for entertainment only. Yes, and in doing the research for it, I came across, of course, a lot of Holocaust denial videos on YouTube. All the videos you see of, I put in there of Holocaust deniers, interviews with them or speeches or lectures they were giving. All of that stuff's on YouTube. It's actually pretty easy to find. You just have to look it up. But they don't promote it. It's like if you open up any one of those videos, they'll usually have one of those boxes just below the video that says, the Holocaust, and then there's a blurb from either Wikipedia or Encyclopedia Britannica or something like that. One of those warnings of, this thing is bad. Yeah. But the thing about with those conspiracy theories versus Holocaust denial is, Alex Jones, as bad as he is, he's at least entertainingly bad. Holocaust deniers are just kind of bad, and they're definitely not... I'll take Alex Jones any day of the week over a Holocaust denier at this point. You can at least laugh at Alex Jones, especially because a lot of those Holocaust denier videos are really poorly, they just have very poor production values. It's a lot of it is just Ernst Zundel or whoever was making these videos just went around with a camera into someone's home and interviewed them and put no effort into post-production at all. It's just really awful. And so it's at least Alex Jones is entertaining, and I don't have to think about, I don't have to try and hear through just the bad 80s, early 90s audio quality. And you can tell that stuff was made for a very particular audience. It was not made for a popular audience. So yeah, that rubber duck. What would you do a similar video on the Armenian genocide? I definitely do have intent on making a Armenian genocide video. Will I make it to the same scale? I don't know. Because Armenian genocide denial is it's honestly actually kind of rare outside of Turkey itself. It's like, it's really just, it's kind of mostly a Turkish issue. Sure, there are some people outside of Turkey that deny the Armenian genocide. You know, Cenk Uygur of the Young Turks used to deny the Armenian genocide. He claims that he doesn't anymore, and I'm going to, since I don't like, assuming ill of other people without further evidence, I'm not going to assume that he still is, but he has a lot of material on it that you can go through if you want to see that. But yes, I could see myself doing a Armenian genocide denial video, or just on an Armenian genocide in general. But I don't see that happening in the near future because I have a few other ideas on my plate that I want to get through first. Poppin', never go down the conspiracy rabbit hole. Never go down the conspiracy rabbit hole unless you're doing research on how conspiracy theories are weird. Yeah. Poppin', why is it ironic that I named the Young Turks? Sure, a number of them used to be Armenian genocide deniers. Ugh, God. Too many genocides to remember. That rubber duck, would you do a video debunking tankies? Okay, so I've heard this phrase before, and I think I might have an idea what it means, but I don't think I actually know what a tanky is. Is it supposed to be like some commie that like argues that the Holodomor didn't happen or something like that, like the Ukrainian famines didn't actually occur? Is that something like that? Because I have no idea. Oh, they're Stalin apologists. Oh, okay, Stalin apologists. I could see myself doing that. Yeah, I could see myself doing that. It's not towards the top. As crazy as, all the commies are nowadays. I have no idea where I was going with that. I guess they are becoming more common now, especially with that Green New Deal basically just being the Communist Manifesto, but, poorly written. So, yeah. Muggarock, conspiracy theories can be an interesting look into the dark side of public paranoia. Okay, yeah. So everyone's just telling me, tankies are people apologizing for like the sympathizers or apologists for the Soviet Union, Stalin, and all those damn dirty commies. Yeah, that's they're they're a bunch. A number of YouTubers seem to be among their ranks now. And some other YouTubers who think they're not among their ranks, I think really are among their ranks. But not naming names here, except for maybe H-Bomber Guy. Okay, Regret asks, how long did it take to make the video? Well, I've had the idea for doing a video about Holocaust denial for nearly a year. So last year, I premiered a series on the history of the Jewish peoples, starting with the video of, where did they come from? And that video has motivated a lot of videos up to this point, or at least a few very important videos to me. Like, it motivated the Jewish DNA evidence of Jewish origins video that I put out in December, and it also motivated this video to come out. And I have at least one more video that's motivated by the anti-Semitic comments from Origins of the Jewish People video. That'll be coming out later this month, hopefully. It won't be as long as Appropriating Legitimacy. I can't put myself through that super often. But in terms of how long it took, I started the full-blown research probably sometime in early to mid-December. And that went through, of course, it went through December, through January, and I basically started actually making the video, putting the video together in probably the last week of January and then the first week of February. So if I had to put a full number, I'd say maybe 2 months, two solid months on appropriating legitimacy is what it took. And in that time, I started, of course, uploading all the podcasts to keep the channel somewhat active while making that video. See, Mugga Rock asks, you think you might do any more skits like arguing like a communist? I've thought about it, and I have a bunch of ideas for little skits here and there, but I'm finding a hard time thinking of a video to put them in, you know? Like, I made Arguing Like a Communist as like one of the last videos before I rebranded the channel to be a straight history channel. And so, if I do anything like Arguing Like a Communist, I'm going to try to make it like match the theme of a video that I'm doing. Like, I have one idea where I have a bunch of mini skits for a video that I'll probably put out in like April, May, or June of this year. So yeah, I'd like to do more, but I have to find a way to integrate it into a video I already have planned. See, the Rubber Duck asks, opinion on postmodernism. Postmodernism, I have a hard time coming up with a solid opinion on it because I can't find a solid definition of it. Like, you know, you've got your Jordan Peterson definition, which is very popular amongst conservatives, and then you have everyone who dislikes Jordan Peterson going, ha ha ha, he talks about lobsters. And their definition just saying, well, Marxists can't be postmodernists because, Marxism has an overarching narrative. And strictly speaking, that's true. However, I find postmodernism is mostly useful for its arguments rather than its philosophical conclusions. That's my view on postmodernism. It's mostly used for its arguments of saying, well, we'll just reject your truth and then we'll inject our own truth into it. So yeah, Poppet asks, do you read Tolkien? Yes, I have read Tolkien. I've read, the 5 main pieces, that being the Lord of the Rings trilogy, The Hobbit, and the Silmarillion. I need to read the other pieces of the History of Middle-earth series, which gives you a bunch of variations on things he wrote in the universe. But yeah, I love Tolkien. It's got to be my favorite author of fiction. All right, Mugga Rock has a question. All right, I'm heading on soon. So last question. What's your favorite era of history? That is a tough question to answer because, if I had to pick favorite era of history to live in, it would definitely be now. I would not want to live any time before now. But favorite area to study, I like early 20th century and like late 18th, early 19th century. All right, the Rubber Duck asks, what do you mean the arguments of postmodernism are useful? I mean they're useful in that you poke a hole. Postmodernist arguments are useful at poking holes in other people's arguments, but they're not good in filling in holes in your own argument. You can say, well, you're only saying X because it's an assumption that X is true. Like I said, I have a hard time coming up with solid feelings on postmodernism because it's hard to find a solid definition on postmodernism. But that's what I find it's most useful, especially like postmodernist arguments are very popular amongst Marxists because fact of the matter is Marxism in the real world has been proven a failure, but with postmodernist arguments, you can say, well, capitalism isn't really a success either. And then once you convince people that capitalism isn't really a success, you can say, well, postmodernism, let's try communism. And there you go. See, pop in, there's a Tolkien biopic, and I'm really hopeful. I'm hopeful about that Tolkien biopic as well. I saw the trailer, and I'm concerned. Like, probably better part of a month ago, Wisecrack put out a philosophy of Tolkien video, and they didn't bring up his religion at all, which seems really odd. And I find that concerning because for Tolkien's work, religion was a very big deal for him. And I think there's a chance they might not cover it. And that's what concerns me. All right. Oh, hello, Muggle Rock. All right. Thanks, Grant. Good night. All right. Goodbye, Muggle Rock. I'll hope to see you next time. Poppin'. Yes, communism, it will work next time. Yes, it'll always work next time. And next time is always next. After the current time. See, the Rubber Duck also asks, are you going to start a Discord server? I don't think I'll start a Discord server, at least not anytime soon. And the reason for it is similar to the reason I haven't done live streams until very recently, because the fact of the matter is, the audience wasn't that big enough, and I don't think there was enough of a demand for it. And at the moment, my comment sections are still mostly manageable. Because, like, except for the whole Origin of the Jews video I put out last year, most of my comment sections are very manageable. And so I don't think a Discord is necessary at this time. Let's see. Any comments I've missed thus far? So Poppin says, Tolkien's Middle-earth pantheon was a combination of deistic and Catholic elements. There is God, Eru, and then there are the gods, the Valar. I wouldn't describe Tolkien's pantheon as being, or I wouldn't describe it as being pantheistic, because given Tolkien's understanding and his religious views, I wouldn't describe the Valar as gods. I think they're more accurately described as angels, given Tolkien's Catholic proclivities. He was like, Tolkien did not like many of the fans of his books, because a lot of the fans of his books, especially in the 60s, were all hippies. And so he kept telling them, it's like, yeah, you're interpreting my work wrong, even though he wasn't a fan of allegory. And so he continued writing the Silmarillion. And at least with the Catholic understanding, the Valar are very much angels, where you have, where Eru is, God who created said angels. There is no God but Iluvatar, and Tolkien is his prophet. Iluvatar Akbar. Okay, let's see. If I missed anything thus far. If the Silmarillion were to be made into media, would it be better as a movie or TV series or shows? I don't think the Silmarillion is adaptable in a visual medium. Because the Silmarillion is written very differently than the rest of... it's very different than The Hobbit or the Lord of the Rings. Because the Silmarillion is written far more like the Bible than it is like a standard narrative. So no, I don't think it can be made, and the Tolkien estate is never going to let the Silmarillion be made into a film. They are not selling the rights to that whatsoever, especially after they were upset with how The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit turned out. Yeah. Yes, Silmarillion is the Bible of Middle-earth. So that Rubber Duck asks, what's your full-time job? Well, I don't have a full-time job right now. I graduated last year. Right now I'm working part-time at a healthcare company that delivers that creates analysis of healthcare laws and then mails out newsletters. And then YouTube is one of my sources of income at the moment. So I don't have any full-time job, and I don't think the future of labor is all going to be people working full-time jobs. Everyone's going to have, multiple jobs that going to end up having multiple income streams, I think. At least that's how I think the future is going to be. But no, I don't have... But the short answer to the question, no, I don't have a full-time job right now. I wish YouTube could be a full-time job, but it's not. And it's not for most of us. Yep, Iluvatar Akbar, yep. Yep, Iluvatar is great. Let's see. Boop-a-doop-boop-boo. See, out of all of the various types of socialism, which would you say was the most successful? Maoist, anarchist? Well, for one, I should say I don't really believe in anarchism. Now, when I say I don't believe in anarchism, I'm not saying it as a moral judgment, like the same way a communist says I don't believe in capitalism. When I say I don't believe in anarchism, I say it in the same way an adult says I don't believe in Santa Claus, as in it doesn't really exist. There are always power structures in place. If you get rid of the conventional state as we think of it, it's just the next strongest thing becomes the state. It just might not call itself the state. So it might be, the biker gang or whatever inner city gang becomes the government of that neighborhood. Anyways, that's just a side tangent on anarchism. In terms of the most successful kind of socialism, I would say it would have to be democratic socialism, mostly because they don't actively invite counter-revolution. Democratic socialism is far more gradual, and so it's bit by bit rather than try to take everything at once. See, all right, seeing someone new commented, Janice Mendiola. Is capitalism worth saving? I think it is, but I would argue that we haven't really been practicing anything remotely close to true capitalism. Of course, then again, you can't practice true capitalism just like you can't practice true communism or true socialism. But I think the most realistic version of capitalism is better than the most realistic version of communism or socialism. And so in that case, I think it is worth saving because it has brought more people out of poverty in the last 50 years than any other form of or economic system. That's why I think it is worth saving. All right. Okay, I got a couple people. Pseudo Space Marine asks thoughts on social democracy, while Poppin follows that up with, what are your thoughts on the situation in Venezuela? Well, social democracy, of all the socialisms out there, I think it's the best, mostly because it doesn't try to do everything all at once, Unlike hardcore communism or Maoism, social democracy is a slow burn. It's a slow burn in terms of just ruining an economy. And the thing that like social democracy does, or like the Scandinavian Nordic model, is that it slows down economic growth. And so you can successfully pull it off so long as you don't have to care for a whole lot more people than you already have. Which is why the Nordic countries have been very iffy on the whole migrant crisis thing. As for Venezuela, well, Venezuela is kind of a shit show, really. Not much else to say there. It is a shit show. people eating their pets. I think, like, if there are any animals in the Caracas Zoo, I would be surprised. If there are any animals left in it. But, yeah, I hope the best for Venezuela. Maduro should just step down so that way things can get back to normal, or at least better than they are. And yes, Venezuela's problem is, in fact, socialism. They took the biggest part of the economy and just drove it into the ground. Dr. Apple? What's Dr. Apple? I don't know who or what that is. See, Pseudo Space Marine replies, the thing about the Scandinavian countries is that they rank higher than the US in terms of economic freedom. Well, yes and no. Yes and no. That they've had lower corporate taxes than us until very recently. And, well, they may actually still have lower taxes than us at the moment. At the corporate level, I'm not sure. But, of course, the Scandinavian countries also, of course, have much higher personal income tax level. And, of course, and they're less regulated in certain areas of the economy, largely because you need big, successful corporations that can employ as many people as possible and bring in as much tax revenue as possible. Almost kind of like a Laffer curve type thing. Poppin, would the Middle East have been better if the British and French kept their promise of a united Arab state? I don't know if it would be. Honestly, I think, like, you look at how Sykes-Picot carved up the Middle East, and it's kind of the best you could possibly have asked for. Like, this idea of we need, all these different religious communities need their own country is ridiculous. There's too many of them there. And in terms of a unified Arab state, you don't really get unified Arab states in the Middle East for a very long time. It's like usually in the Middle East, the history is usually there's a power centered in Anatolia and a power centered in the Iranian plateau. And then they fight over Mesopotamia. And we've seen that for a long time. We saw that with the Ottoman Empire and the Safavid Empire. Then the Ottomans and whoever the hell succeeded the Safavids. At the top of my head, I can't remember. And then, of course, today you're seeing the true Cold War in the Middle East, which Fox keeps saying is Saudi Arabia and Iran, but is in reality Iran and Turkey. Let's see, So a unified Arab state, I don't think it would have worked long term, is what I think is the problem there. There were plenty of other things that were going to divide it, because it's like if they weren't being divided by this idea of nationality, then they would have been divided by tribe or religious affiliation. That Rubber Duck asks, thoughts on Augusto Pinochet? I like Pinochet memes. That is my answer to that question. You can push commies out of helicopters. Pseudo Space Marine would like to ask, will you ever cover the history of Israel? Partly, I have to wonder, do you mean ancient Israel or modern Israel? The answer to both is yes. In my History of the Jewish People series, I will be covering both eventually. At the moment, I had to cover the origins of the Jews and then genetic evidence around the origins of the Jews. And then the next episode for that series is going to be the historicity of Exodus, which I hope to come out in April. So yes, both will be covered at some point. So yeah, Poppin asks, will there ever be another caliphate, or are they going to be gone forever? They'll come back. They'll come back. At some point, I can't tell you when. They're the most likely, though one will most likely come back when the Western world gets tired of intervening and or becomes incapable of militarily intervening in the Middle East. And for the last 200-300 years, the West has been able to intervene in the Middle East more or less without, consequence, aside from the occasional terrorist attack, and that's more of a recent phenomena. Regret asks, what is your favorite alternate history series? I haven't read too many full-blown alternate history series. In fact, I think the only one I've ever actually read in terms of a professionally published one would have to be Harry Turtledove's Timeline 191, or as its official name is, the Southern Victory series. It's the only one I've ever actually read. Otherwise, I'm just familiar with alternate history as a genre, and I used to write a lot of it on alternatehistory.com. Veltine Hedsor, or Hesador, asks, do you think the EU will survive the decade? I think it'll survive the decade, I just don't know in what form. Because we see different parts of the EU are closer together than other parts. Like you have France, that's very close with the Mediterranean area, and you have Germany more closely related to Northern Europe, so I think you sort of have two camps within the EU within a decade still. So yes, I think it'll survive, it just won't be as politically unified. See, Janice Mendiola asks, how do you feel about countries still having possessions and territories? I think it's fine so long as those possessions and territories are fine with continuing to be, under the sovereignty of that country. I mean, what are the Virgin Islands going to do, Or Samoa. Most of those places would like to become full-blown, or a number of those places like to become states or part of states. As for other countries, I don't know, France has still got a chunk of South America that it doesn't want to give up. And the UK still has the Falklands, but I guess the Falklands still like being part of the UK, and French Guiana seems to like being part of France. It's an easy thing to get more money into their country. So I'm fine with it so long as the subject peoples are fine with it also. Consent, for lack of better words. See, Pseudo Space Marine asks, will you ever debunk Zakaria Sitchin's claims on the Sumerian civilization? I have no idea what Sitchin's claims on the Sumerian civilization are. I'm a history guy. I cover the places that interest me. I have not studied the Sumerian civilization very deeply, so I can't say. So yeah, Poppin says, the Carthage war elephants were the most bad-was weapons in history. I don't know if that's supposed to be badass weapons in history, but they were definitely a surprise. I like the way Blue from Overly Sarcastic Productions described it as, like a monster, just literal monsters with a snake for a face and horns. Okay, Mendelsweebly, Mendelsweeble, or Zwybel. Hi, I just wanted to say I really enjoyed your appropriating legitimacy video, and I managed to watch the whole thing despite my short attention span. Well, thank you, Zweebel. That was the hope. That was what I intended. That's what I hoped for most people, was to be able to watch the whole thing. I appreciate that. It took a long time to make, and I appreciate people watching all the way through. Curious, how many people watching actually watched through the whole of the credits of the video? Anybody watch through the credits? Because I pulled a Marvel in the credits. I don't know if anyone saw it. Oh, Mendel Zwiebel. Oh, I got the name right the second. And fourth time. Gotcha. Yeah. Oh, yes. And yes. Okay. Badass was what you were saying about Carthage war elephants. Well, for anyone curious about what my next video subject is, for anyone curious about what the next video subject is, I left a clue to that at the very end of the Appropriating Legitimacy video. If you watch through till the end, I come to a part where I say, hey, sneak peek at the next video topic, and poof, as a reward to those who decide to sit through the credits, which nobody ever wants to watch, including myself. See, next Historian Essentials video, asks the Rubber Duck. Well, I have a number of topics I could cover and even a few scripts already written for future topics, but the first quarter of 2019, I'm focusing on sort of bigger videos. Though I have some smaller ones I'm going to be getting out, hopefully in the nearish future, to fill up time, just so it's not more re-uploaded episodes of the podcast. But, yeah. Yeah, so, yeah, so next Historian Essentials, I have a number of them picked. I don't know which one I'll do next whenever I decide to restart them. And, pop in, it says I'll have to check out the credits when we're done. Yeah. So I guess that's a thing I'm going to start doing for big videos in the future, putting sneak peeks to the next topic at the end of them. Veltine Hessador, what would you think if the USW... You're gonna need to put your questions in full sentences there, buddy, Hessador. The Rubber Duck asks, thoughts on materialist history? Materialist history has a certain attraction to them because there's this idea that, we in our everyday lives, we have to deal with the material reality that we live in. So we can't really do much without it. And so there's this idea that, all history is economics history. The problem, however, is that that's a very new interpretation, and it's an interpretation that became popular with the Industrial Revolution as our ability to create material goods became better. And so I think it's something that you need to look at, but I think we put too much emphasis on economics as a role of history. We assume that if somebody's doing something, it's because they have some sort of economic interest in mind, ignoring the fact that blowing yourself up with C4 doesn't help your material situation. So it's useful, but keep it tempered with other kinds of history. Poppin asks, how do you feel about the recent measles outbreak in Oregon? Get your kids vaccinated. That's the thought. I don't support mandatory vaccination because, I don't like obtrusive government. This is just your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man asks you to get your kids vaccinated, all right? It's great that we don't die from these things that killed people a long time ago. Just to ignore them. Pseudoscience Space Marine. Favorite World War II small arms? No idea. I'm a big Second Amendment guy, but I have never fired anything more complex than a black powder rifle. So no thoughts on that whatsoever. No opinions on it. Okay, Veltine Hessador, right? Second try, let's go. What would you think if the U.S. elevated elements of its constitution to a global level for a unified system of defense, trade, and rights? Well, I think the U.S. government model is probably superior to others, but I don't think it would work forced on the whole world. In fact, I don't think a world government would work very well. At least, I don't think a world government could function short of like a very bureaucratic, technocratic one that doesn't really seek the consent of the governed. So I don't think there's a good way to elevate any part of the U.S. Constitution to sort of a global governance level. Assuming that's, if I'm understanding your question. Mendel Zwiebel, thoughts on possible two-state solution for Israel and Palestine? In an ideal world, a two-state solution would work, but I don't think geography will let it, considering the fact that whenever we see maps around the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, they show a close-up map saying, oh, look at how much territory the Israelis have taken from the West Bank. And they show these big blown-up maps, and it looks like, wow, Israel's taken a lot of territory. But when you look at a map of the region as a whole, you realize there's just not a lot of land there. Like in the former British Mandate Palestine, consisting of modern-day Israel, West Bank, and the Gaza Strip, it's just not a lot of territory there. So I honestly think a federal single-state solution is probably the more realistic one. Yeah, so you can't, basically in the history of the world, there's never been two sovereign states operating in that territory. It's only ever been one, or it's been controlled by an outside power. So, just in terms of practicality, I don't think a two-state solution is going to work for Israel and Palestine. Regret asks, will you ever do the monarchist movements in Europe? I will. There's plans to eventually do it. But, dear God, there's a lot of them. Just, that's one of the big things that's kept me from doing it so far, is that there's just so many in Europe. Because it's a place where they used to have a bunch of them. And so it's just sort of overwhelming to want to actually do that and do it with any level of competency. So I see myself doing it in the future, but I don't see that being the next one. If I do more in the future, the next ones are probably going to be Middle East and Africa. If I cover anything of that. Yeah. Ugh. But let's see here. See, in the comment section of the video, a lot of people arguing about that whole Reagan thing at the beginning. Thought it was a sort of a nothing burger there, but I don't know. Let's see here. So happy there's... So yeah, one of the comments that makes me happy from the previous, from the appropriating legitimacy video, from Oh No, I'm happy to see there isn't a flood of autistic kids denying the Holocaust in the comments section. You're right. He's right. It's not a flood. It's been a small trickle, which is nice. Have you heard of Ismail ibn Sharif, a Moroccan king who had up to 1,000 kids? I have not, but that sounds like a guy who never missed a Valentine's Day. Yeah, no, can't say I've heard of him. Can't say I've heard of him. How recent would that have been in history? Because I have no idea. Let's see. Oh, let's see if Wikipedia's got anything on this guy. Zia Veltine Hessador says, you were partly correct. I was thinking more along the lines of a system of mutual defense, free trade, and investment, while granting citizens rights like free speech, self-defense, but local governance. Ah, okay, so, well, the issue with, I guess, making comparisons with that in the U.S. is the U.S. at the end of the day is very much just a single country. It's not an alliance of states, not anymore anyways. It's long since lost that trait. But, but more free trade, more rights among people all around the world, it would be better for everyone, I think. And, self-defense, local governance, yeah, it all sounds great. I just don't think it's too realistic to implement anything like that on a global scale. Okay, poppin'. 800 escorts for that Ismail Ibn Sharif guy. Jesus. That is, have to be a very busy guy. If you want to meet them all in 1 year, that makes you a very busy man. Jeez. Even if you only visit them each one only once a year, that's still a very busy schedule. Then again, I guess if you're a sultan, you don't have to worry too much about that. Beltine Hessador, thank you for answering. Well, you're welcome. Aluk the Gamer, hi. Hello, Aluk the Gamer. What's your deal? Words. Mendel Zwiebel asks, thoughts on the accuracy of the ancient Judean kings like David, etc.? Well, as a religious person myself, I am, of course, have to admit my bias of being more inclined to believe them than not. When it comes to Old Testament archaeology, of course, there are two extremes in it. There's the idea of the biblical minimalism, where you don't believe in anything in the Old Testament unless you find explicit proof for it outside of it. And you have the biblical maximalists that believe that, believe everything until you find something explicitly contradicting it. And I'd be lying if I said for religious reasons I didn't think that I wasn't closer to the biblical maximalist side than not. But I think we've found more evidence of them in recent years. Because, in recent decades, people were arguing that King David didn't exist. And then in the 90s, we started finding stuff that, it turns out he did. Whether or not he did all the things as described in the Old Testament is uncertain, but he definitely seemed to have created some kind of polity in an area that roughly resembles modern-day Israel. Roughly, he may have been a little further east than the modern state of Israel is. I believe they existed, but the grand details are a little much. Yeah, I don't blame for people thinking that, and I'm not an archaeology guy. I'm hardly an expert on any of the things I make videos about. I just become temporarily an expert on a small bit. Poppin, the royal dynasty in Ethiopia claimed descent from Solomon, the Queen of Sheba. Yes, that is a thing that exists, and that's actually somewhat related to my next video, which a hint to is in the end credits of the appropriating legitimacy. So, hints all around. But yeah, so the biblical kingdom of David, I think it existed. How many of the details are accurate as described in the Old Testament, I can't say for certain. But I think the Old Testament is more important as a theological document than as a historical one. Although, in its writing style, it's supposed to function as kind of both. Let's see. All right, see, we're coming up near an hour, so I think I'm going to do maybe another 15, 20 minutes. Mendel Zwiebel, what about Moses? Well, here's the thing. There's sort of these two camps saying, oh, someone like Moses couldn't have existed. But I lean towards Moses. Someone like Moses probably existed. Largely because the name Moses itself. Moses is an Egyptian name, coming from like Tutmosis. And you got to think, well, why would the Israelites have one of their greatest heroes have a name from one of their greatest enemies, the Egyptians? And so I think there's some truth to the Moses story. Once again, whether or not full, story of Exodus details true, I can't take a position on that. The scholarship at the moment says probably not, but that's not my area of expertise. So I'm not going to question them, at least not too strongly in videos I make, unless I get a lot more knowledgeable in the area. Let's see. Pseudo-Space Marine says, in Islam, King Solomon, Suleiman, is said to have had the ability to control jinn. Well, I haven't read that bit of the Quran. Not denying it, I just haven't read that bit, so I can't say for certain. But, the Quran has jinn and the Bible doesn't, so what can I say? Veltine Hedosaur asks, your thoughts on what appears to be a rising amount of anti-Christian activism? I think it's a necessary part of certain political movements in the world and the U.S. today. Because a traditionally religious person, especially a traditionally Christian person, isn't going to go along with a lot of the social progressive ideas that we see now. Same-sex marriage, LGBTQ, plus however many letters they've added recently, activism. They don't really go along with that. A traditionally believing Christian who follows the Bible, as it said, doesn't go along with that. And so you see some deliberate targeting, like all the instances we've seen of bakers, flower shop owners, photographers who don't want to perform, their services for a same-sex wedding are being deliberately targeted. Like that instance at the baker in Colorado, he was deliberately targeted because the couple that went after him knew he wasn't going to perform the ceremony. He wasn't going to provide a cake for the ceremony, and so they deliberately went after him. They're going after religious liberty. And I understand why they think they have to do it, but I don't think it's good for people in the long run. But that's a topic for its own video, I think. Poppin asks, how do you feel about the Will Smith genie? It's creepy. For lack of better comparisons, it's almost as creepy as like seeing someone in blackface. Because I talked about this on Twitter, but not only does blackface look racist, but it also looks like you're staring into the uncanny valley. And looking at the Will Smith blue genie definitely looks like I'm staring into the uncanny valley here. So it's creepy. Thoughts on Howard Zinn, asks the Rubber Duck. Zinn was a bad historian. His most famous book, A People's History of the United States, is not taken seriously by historians, and no academic publication wants to publish it. And he went out of his way to pick out any and all documents and people who said anything negative about America and just put it in a book. That's Howard Zinn for you. I don't see him as a valuable historian. I have his book mostly because you just need to be able to reference it. Mendel Zwiebel asks, do you think there will always be mainstream religion in government, social culture, etc.? I guess it depends on what you mean by mainstream religion. I think there are always attempts over time to replace what we think of as a traditional deistic religion with non-deistic religions. Like say, Marxism, for example. Marxism is often confused for an economic system or an economic philosophy, which it isn't. And I would say Marxism barely qualifies as a political philosophy. I usually describe Marxism myself as a religion, There is no God but class, and Marx was its prophet. And so, but traditional religion, it'll go through times where it's in stronger and times when it's weaker. Especially like two religions that have shown amazing resilience throughout history despite oppression is Judaism and Christianity. Those two religions, I think, will last a long time, assuming we don't come to some sort of, Abrahamic assuming the apocalypse doesn't happen. I assume all these religions are going to continue existing in one form or another for the foreseeable future. See, the rubber duck asks, am I a monarchist? No. I am a small r Republican. As a religious person, as far as I see it, monarchy, divine right of kings, that can only exist in a God-granted monarchy, and that was given to, the line of King David and the line of King Saul. He took it away from Saul, and David's line is gone. So as far as I see it, there's no, at least, religiously justified monarchies nowadays. Luke the Gamer asks, what are your thoughts on St. Luke writing the book of Luke and Acts of Apostles? What do you think the questioned authenticity of St. Paul's letters? Well, most scholars of the Gospels do believe that St. Luke, or whoever wrote the book of Luke, also wrote the book of Acts. That's pretty apparent from the texts. And as to the authenticity of St. Paul's letters, well, we know a number of them were written by Paul, and a number of them probably weren't. Like the book of Hebrews, I think, is one of the ones that's not considered to be one of his. But yeah, but they're all still considered to be genuine in terms of their theological value by most Christians. So my position on those, on the book of Luke, Acts, and the letters of St. Paul, are pretty standard. Mendel Zwiebel. Okay, for example, In God We Trust. Just as his asking about mainstream religion and government. And I think that's stuff like that is going to remain, because a lot of stuff loses its meaning over time, but it stays in its place just out of, a tradition. So yes, I think we'll keep stuff like that in place. That rubber duck, thoughts on St. Louis, Missouri? Never been there. I just know that that's where the headquarters for the Lutheran Church of Missouri Synod is, but I've never been there. Regret, thoughts on neo-paganism? Neo-pagans, in my experience, are just atheists who want to play dress up. They want to dress in a cloak, go into the woods and light candles, and maybe draw a pentagram. They want to LARP. That's what they want to do. They want to LARP, and they want to have some kind of theme to it. But most neo-pagan practices are entirely fictional to the 20th, 21st centuries. Pseudo-Space Marine. Have you ever read the Book of Enoch? No, I am familiar with it, and I think I have a collection of texts that includes the Book of Enoch, but I have not read the Book of Enoch. See you, Luke the Gamer. Didn't mean to put you on the spot there. Been reading CPH commentary on Colossians. No problem, no problem. You can't assume what people know and don't know. And I don't blame you for asking a question like that, since I've made videos where I talk about the texts at different points. So I don't blame anyone for thinking that. See ya, that rubber duck. I went to high school across the street from the Lutheran headquarters. Ah, interesting. So I'm guessing that rubber duck is from Missouri, or St. Louis, Missouri. Yeah, well, I've never been there. No, I haven't been there, so I can't say much. Pseudo Space Marine, I think you're referring to Satanists in Wicca. I think most neo-pagans are still the same. Neo-pagans think, or new neo-pagans often think that they're performing these old rituals once practiced a long time ago. But here's the thing. Most pagan rituals, especially from like the Mediterranean world, we don't have any records of, because they didn't really keep them. They didn't have this idea of orthodoxy that Abrahamic religions do. And because of that, they didn't really write down much in terms of rituals and doctrines. It was very much a go with the flow kind of thing, to my understanding anyways. So yeah, Mendel's Weeble. Do you think that religion is the source of morality or not? I think, in my view, divine revelation is the only objective argument for morality. Like, minus anything like... Because minus something like that, there's nothing in nature that tells us killing is wrong. Nothing in nature that inherently says stealing is wrong. Because in nature, the only thing that matters really is survival. You know, you survive whatever way you can and you meet your biological needs. Be it for food, water, shelter, fornication, whatever. And because of that, I think the only objective source of morality is divine revelation. Now, that doesn't mean I think that non-religious people can't be moral. They can. But I notice that most atheists live in, you know, society. Most atheists get their morality from religion. They just try to subtract the God bit from it. You know, it's like, oh, I won't murder or steal. You know, I'll just be a good person without God. Well, great, you can do that. But just know, there's nothing objective about that morality you're holding on to without some kind of deistic figure, you know, ordaining it. Or at least that's how I see it. I'm willing to listen to people who argue otherwise, but at least as far as I see it, there's no such thing as objective morality without divine revelation. All right. So yeah, Zweeble follows that up. I really appreciate you answering all my questions. Got to go practice a speech for tomorrow morning. All right. Godspeed, Mendel Zweeble. You know, don't want you, once you get a good grade on that speech, or if it's for a meeting, go do well in that meeting, I guess. Pseudo Space Marine. I have heard an argument that mirror neurons allow us to feel empathy, thus allowing for a rudimentary form of morality. Well, once again, that could be how, you know, a divine creator decided to make us feel empathy, but I'm not going to force that idea on anyone. It still doesn't sort of give like this... It's like, morality can't be understood objectively in the same way that we can say, okay, 2 + 2 is 4, that's an objective truth. You don't need reason and logic to understand it. It just is. Morality, I feel like objective morality can't exist in the same way. That it just is through logic, reason, or study. At least that's how I understand it. If people have these ideas of, like the scientific explanation for why we feel certain ways, that more often than not ends up getting incorporated by like intelligent designers as saying, oh, see, God or whatever created us, designed us to feel empathy, and this is how he made us do it. But, that's all, afterwards rationalization. Luke the Gamer, have you read 1st and 2nd Chronicles? Your thoughts? I haven't read all of 1st and 2nd Chronicles. My understanding is that it's supposed to be one of the histories at the top of my head. All right, see. All right. I'm going to go for about another 4 or 5 minutes, and then we'll be closing up for the evening. So if you have any questions, send them in now. See, Regret asks, do you like heavy metal? Not really. No. Luke the Gamer, books that historians have wrote that you would recommend. Well, let's see here. Let me look at my library real quick. If you're looking for some nice, grand-looking history, I might recommend Winston Churchill's A History of the English-Speaking Peoples. And, if you're looking for a good primer on Middle Eastern history, I would recommend Destiny Disrupted by Tamim Ansari. And if you're looking for good American history, just for the fun of it, I would recommend reading A Patriot's History of the United States and A People's History of the United States, just so you get two extreme viewpoints on it together. Does California still need water? The Midwest has a lot of snow right now. California always needs water, and if there's a way to deliver that snow, I hope it's economical. What about the pack mentality? Our primary survival tool is, I got your back. Ultimately, with the pack mentality, it's, I'm supporting you in hopes that you will support me later. It's still ultimately about individual survival. As far as I see it anyways. Pseudo Space Marine, thanks for answering my questions and comments. Take care. You're welcome, Pseudo Space Marine. Veltine Hessador, thanks for the stream. And thank you guys all for watching it. I'm going to make streaming a more regular thing. And I'll definitely schedule a stream probably a week after every major video. So after the next big video, which I hinted at the end of Appropriating Legitimacy, I will do another stream like this. So if that's all the questions everyone has for now, I think I am going to wrap it up here. All right. Thanks for watching, everybody, and have a good night.